I'm Nancy Mill. I live in Wichita, Kansas, and my book with Bethany House is coming out in summer of 2012. Well, I thought it would be interesting to write a story about someone who was trying to find God's will for her life. And she's left the place she grew up and moved someplace else thinking that that was God's will, but found out that it wasn't. She returns home to see what God has for her in the town of Kingdom, Kansas, a Mennonite town in northwest Kansas. Writing a story with a character who has a past, a present, and a future means that you have to tie everything in together. And so presenting her past and giving a good view of her life in the present and taking her back again had a lot of challenges. I needed to make sure that everything tied together and that all the characters fit. When you write about Mennonites, there's a lot of research involved, and I have a gal who's a church historian at a Mennonite church in Gossel, Kansas, and so I use her extensively to check my facts and to make sure that I'm presenting things in a realistic form. Also, when you create a town, you kind of have to investigate the area around it and make sure that you're presenting it correctly. Is it hilly? Is it flat? Most of Kansas is flat. And so a lot of times I'll even travel to the area where I've set the town just to make sure that that kind of town would fit in that area. Actually, I wrote a series of books that were put into a 3-in-1 called Cozy in Kansas. And in that book, I created a town of Winter Break, Kansas, and it was a small town, the kind of town I'd like to live in. And the reaction from my readers was one I never expected. They all talked about how they'd like to live there and how they maybe grew up in a town like that. So I found out that people are really looking for that simpler life. Everything is so complicated now, life is so complicated. And people really react well to a small town that reminds them of their childhood. So in Kingdom, things are more old-fashioned, their neighbors care about each other, people treat each other with respect, and so yes, Kingdom was a very important part of the story. Yes, when you're writing a story with a Mennonite background, you really have to explore the difference between certain religious practices because you want to honor God and because it's a choice you've made rather than making it law. And so grace is a very important concept to me in my own life. So in Kingdom, I really make that a strong aspect of the story, that most of the people are interested in living the way they do because they love God and they want to honor Him, not because they feel they have to. Although there are some people in Kingdom that don't feel the same way, and that adds conflict to the story. Well, I don't really have a favorite. The main character, Lizzie, is someone I can certainly identify with because she's looking for God's will in her life and thinks she's found it and then discovers that perhaps she hasn't and that it may be someplace she never thought to look. But also I like the character of Matthew, her father, and you wouldn't think originally that he would be somebody you could like because he's harsh and demanding and seems unfeeling, but the truth is he was raised in that kind of a background and has a real struggle with showing love to his daughter and the people around him. And so his struggle is very important to me in that book.